Hello class, this is a brief video and PowerPoint that will talk about the naked city and also introduce you to the concepts of setting and decor. Remember, one of the key elements when talking about film is the term mise en scene, which is basically a sort of academic term to talk about stuff that goes in front of the camera, stuff that makes the world of the movie. And it could be acting, camera movement, lighting, all the things we've looked at. And one of the big ones is setting and decor. And I want to draw a distinction between these two things. So, go ahead and pause the video and ask yourself, looking at this scene from the naked city, what words do you think in terms of the setting? Like, this is a great establishing shot that gives the setting of New York City. So go ahead and pause the video, think of some words, come back. All right. Now, look at this scene from the film Taxi Driver, also talking about New York. How does this scene create some words that you think of this setting of New York City? Compare it to our previous one. All right, what are words do you think about this presentation of New York City as a setting? Good. One more. Now, how does New York City as the setting here appear here? What are some words that you can describe this picture of the setting? Great. So now if we can compare all three of these three scenes, the one from Naked City, the one from Taxi Driver, and the one from the Marvel's Avengers movie, Spider-Man movie, all New York, but all three are presenting New York as a setting to you, giving you very different tones and experiences of what the film is supposed to be. All three are New York, but you get a different set of words for this scene. You get a different set of words for this scene, and a different set of words for this scene. That is how setting can help influence everything that we do and think about when we watch a film. So as I mentioned, mise en scene. Mise en scene is a French term meaning put in the scene, and is concerned with all aspects in front of the camera, including setting, decor, props, costume, hair, makeup, digital effects. So if we think of characters that are completely animated characters in movies, staging, performance, blocking, lighting, color, camera movement, and special effects. So if you've kind of noticed, we've already talked about things like lighting, all right, and staging and movement, the way the camera moves, things like that, the way that it's showing us stuff. So now we're going to add another element of analyzing mise en scene, which we're going to look at setting. All right, setting. All right. So Andre Bazin talked about setting this way. The human being is all important in the theater. The drama on the screen can exist without actors. A banging door, a leaf in the wind, waves beating on the shore heighten the dramatic effect. Some film masterpieces use man only as an accessory, like an extra, or a counterpoint to nature, which is the true leading character. Basically, what this quote is telling you about setting, when you go and watch a show in the theater, a live performance, the person, the humans performing on the stage are all important. You're going to see the performance of an actor. Now, setting and stage design is totally important in the theater, not saying that, but it's all there to present to you the performance of the live actors. Now, when we watch a movie, that shifts the dynamic. The actors are no longer the center of the drama. The setting can be the centerpiece of the drama. The character of New York in the Naked City, is almost as important as any of the dramatics of the plot surrounding Gene Dexter, Willie Garza, and our cop heroes. All right. You know, the story, I mean, the voiceover narration of the film tells you this. You know, this is just one story in the Naked City. Think of all of the things we pop in and see different people throughout the city. All right? The city of New York is the true leading character of the Naked City. And the people are only an accessory to tell a bit of a story about the city of New York. And that's what Bazin is talking about here. So, when we look at setting, what we want to think about are three major components. First, in no particular order, the social environment, the culture, community, and people of the film. In most films, the settings will include people doing stuff in a community. You know, what is their culture? Who are the people that live there? What are the routines? What are the way that their space in the picture is outlined? You know, how in the film The Naked City, think of all talking about the subway and people traveling home and on the buses and the kids playing in the river. All of those things are showing you the culture and community of New York City at that time. They're telling you, here's the social environment of New York City during the time of this movie. Next, place. The actual physical layout of the film. You know, what is the location? In this case, we have, in the Naked City, a very urban location. And then finally, the time period. When in history does the film take place? Is it a sci-fi movie that takes place way into the future? Or is it in the Middle Ages? You know, is it during the dinosaur time? When in time does the film take place? So in The Naked City, we have a very clear post-World War II time period. You know, we have that sort of blossoming of what would be sort of the height of America after World War II, when it was blue skies. Now you can compare that time period, which we see most closely in the domestic aspects of our detectives. All right, when he comes home and sees his wife, and the wife tells him that he has to discipline the kid, and there's the toys in the yard, and they have the nice home. Like, that is that time period of post-World War II bliss compared with the horrific nature of the crime. So, three things: social environment, the culture, the place, the actual layout of what the film is showing you, and then the time in which it takes place. So, the setting or place of a film, or even individual scenes, can be indicative of the historical time of the film, the state of mind of the film's characters, a moment in the film where the narrative climax has been reached. Okay, and we can see all of these if we look at the setting of The Naked City. Think of the moment in the film where the narrative climax has been reached. All right? Think of, and I would argue, the narrative climax is when Garza and the detective fight. All right? When Willie Garza has been exposed. And they're in his apartment, you have that tense moment, and then he attacks him and he gets away. Everything else there is denouement. Even when he climbs up the bridge and gets shot and falls to his death. So think of setting as a broader sense. Setting can be outdoor aspects. Setting can be the larger area of location in which a film is taking place. A setting can be individual points in that. So New York City is the setting of The Naked City. And we see that in the historical time. We see how that setting impacts the mind of the characters. We also see that in important moments in the film, you know, where they show us scenes in the city where, you know, a discovery of the case has happened, or you've had a chase scene, that sort of stuff. When we talk about decor, we're talking about tinier ways that interior settings are designed. So decor is a subset of settings. Okay, so you can kind of put setting at the top and the decor underneath it. And one of the things about decor is that it is oftentimes used to give us information about specific characters, how a person's room or private space is designed lets us know about that character. So let's look at some general examples of setting and decor from big films before we take a look at them in the naked city. So this is from Star Wars. This is obviously the setting of Star Wars. The stars, space. All right, that's the general setting of where most of Star Wars takes place. It takes place in space. Here would be Decor. Here is the throne room of the Emperor, who is this bad guy in the center. And so we could see that the overall setting of the film is space, but the drama of this and the decor tells us about the characters. Tells us that this is sort of prison-like, tells us that our main hero is trapped in, gives us an ominous sense of foreboding with all of the blackness. So the decor of this interior room lets us know about the character dynamics within it, while the setting of space can impact larger thematic issues in a film. So that's sort of an example of how setting and decor work together. So let's look at some examples from our film now. Now we're finally ready to talk about setting and decor in the naked city. Examples of setting. Here's a great scene, and there are many, many examples of this. So the setting of this rooftop gives us the background of New York City and kind of lets us into how Muldoon fits within the larger story of the character. Muldoon here is positioned in front of the city. He's shown as pensive, thinking as he sucks on his trademark pipe with the city in the background. The city is sort of framed in the periphery of Muldoon's eyesight, but it's on his, he could still see it from his peripheral vision, to show you that the city is quite literally on the mind of the detective. He is thinking about the mystery of the city. The mystery of a city that produces murder mysteries like we saw. So you can kind of see, almost if you think, this is almost here, if you look at the way he's positioned, it's almost like this would be like a vision in his head. You know, if this were a comic book, this would be like in a thought bubble. So you can see how by positioning the setting of the city behind him, it contrasts with his inner thoughts. It shows us that he's thinking not just about the cases and what he's done, about G. Dexter and the legacy. He's thinking about the overall aspect of what is this strange, huge beast known as New York City. So this scene tells us visually that the contrast of this, the important thing is how this force of nature, all right, that is the city of New York, is the dominant character of the movie, and one of our heroes, Muldoon, is thinking about that. He's thinking about all of the sorts of elements of the city that the film brings up. Another great setting at the end of the movie, with Garza on the bridge, one of the most famous parts, all right? So, this is another powerful example of setting, and also is a great example of how using the city as a background really emphasizes that this is a film a lot about setting. The plot playing out in New York City is important. So, much like the previous scene we looked at with Muldoon, where he's thinking about the city and thinking about the crime that takes place within the city and what his place is in it, here we have Garza at his end. The jig is up. He has been caught, and there is no way out, and he's almost going to die. All right. Garza now is looking above the city, looking down at it. All right. He is positioned above with this high vantage point, looking down because his story is now reaching the climax. His story is now the story of New York filled within stories. In an odd way, his crime has finally risen him to prominence, which he's kind of, in some respects, always wanted. If you think about the way he talked about his past as a wrestler and his fame as a wrestler, He now has that. He is almost more important than the city. He is above it. He is no longer within it. But even as Garza has reached the climax of his story, he's reached the center point, the most important part of his entire existence. All right, his story. He's above the city. We also see how the city is going on uncaring. So even though this is the most important thing in the movie for our characters, the cops have their man, they're trying to get him, they've had this shootout and chase, Garza is trapped. It is for the characters of the film. We have our bad guy finally about to get his due. We are finally about to see justice for Gene Dexter. And the city could care less. New York City, our main character, is going about its business. Even though he's above the city is not looking at him. The attention of the city is not on Garza. All right? The city moves on uncaring. And that's a huge element of the film. The ending narration even brings this home with the dumping of the newspapers in the trash. All right? And the sort of melancholy end of the movie. New York City, as this beast, this force of nature, does not care about the amazing drama of our characters that we as the audience care about. The city has moved on. So this is a great example of how the setting of New York City really impacts those themes, those elements of the movie about the uncaring nature of crime. All right? There's no real great satisfaction to this crime story. All right? Gene doesn't receive justice. Willie Garza, yes, he gets a comeuppance and dies, but no one cares because there's another story. All right? There's also a great scene in this scene here. I didn't capture it, but a lot of people have written about it where Garza is, at this end of his life. The movie is at this intense point, and he looks down, and people are playing tennis. The city doesn't care. The setting of this film of New York City, there's a lot of love of New York City, a lot of great things in it, but the movie stresses over and over again. In the naked city, right? It's sort of an uncaring city. So, if those are examples of setting, let's look at the example of decor, all right? So let's examine decor in one of the opening scenes of The Naked City. This is the cramped decor of Muldoon's apartment, just one of the series of stories of New York City. This helps see that our cop is not necessarily a hero. He is just a normal person going about his day in sort of a normal apartment. His kitchen is small. It's not luxurious. It's very normal. There's nothing really that stands out. And this decor tells us a lot about who Muldoon is as a character. All right? He drives a lot of the movie Muldoon. He's sort of kind of the lead investigative cop that we see. Gives people a lot of orders and figures it out, things of that nature. But this humanizes him. We see him in just a regular, small kitchen apartment of New York City. Not dissimilar from thousands of apartment kitchens across the city. This will also emphasize his comments about growing up poor. If you remember, there's a point in the movie where he talks about how on, $50 a week, he raised his entire family, and this re-emphasizes that nature of Muldoon's sort of working class cop life. Now, if we compare Halloran's decor in his room, all right, we see a huge contrast between our two main detectives. All right, Halloran's house is so different from Muldoon's small apartment, and all of this decor tells us about the sort of post-World War II prosperity life that Halloran is living. All right, Muldoon's apartment, emphasizes his poor background, and if you think of his age, Muldoon would have lived through the Great Depression as an older man. Halloran's house and the decor here represents the prosperity of the post-World War II generation. I mean, it looks like it could be in any number of sitcom movies that you would watch. I Love Lucy, The Dick Van Dyke Show. If you have been watching the show WandaVision, this is kind of what they're talking about. It's also noted that as a veteran, Halloran most likely purchased this house via the GI Bill. It's a perfect picture of post-World War II domesticity. The table is set, all right, with the dinner, all of the plates. The house is meticulously cleaned and designed. You know, you have the picture of the small hobby horse in the window for the kid. Not only is his wife perfectly coiffed, the house itself is perfectly coiffed with a perfect image of post-World War II family life. And this tells us a lot about the differences between Halloran's character and Muldoon's character. Just the decor of their interior spaces leads us to an understanding of their interiority, their interior ideas as characters. So, if we compare, setting of The Naked City shows us the character of the uncaring New York City of the 40s, late 40s. It's lively, full of energy, full of community, full of interesting characters and people, but it is dangerous. It's full of stories, where even tragedy and murder is just another story among 8 million people. It's confusing, but filled with life. The decor. The interior apartments show us about the personality of their characters. We could even look at the way Gene Dexter's apartment was a decor. We could look at the office of Stoneman. These interior apartments show us the interiority of the characters. So they show us how they live, letting us know their background and social status, and letting us know their own interior minds. The interior apartments show us the inside of the characters. So this is just a quick video letting us understand the difference between setting and decor.